This episode is sponsored by Well Balanced Nutrition and 360 Health.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey, I'm Kristen.
And I'm Eleanor.
And today we're talking about the book Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. It is a book about unlocking the power of sleep and dreams.
Yeah, and you know, Matthew Walker says he's a sleep scientist. He's not a board-certified doctor of sleep medicine. This guy has spent his career on this stuff. And you know, these books we read get to be specialized. These people spend their whole life on one topic. And I'm more of a generalist, so that's what I'm finding fun about reading these books.
Exactly, and I'm thankful that you've devoted so much time because this is a big book, and you learn a whole lot about sleep, a lot of interesting things about why we need it, what happens when we dream, and what happens when we don't get enough of it.
Right, and you know, we spend a third of our lives sleeping. And I know when I go to the doctor, they rarely ask me about that third of my life. And it's about time that maybe, you know, we start sharing that a little more to see how that affects our health and our healthy lifestyles. One of the things about this book that I always like to call our attention to is who publishes them. And this is a Simon Schuster, and it came out in 2018. So it's, I think you said you found it on the, why are we reading this book?
Yeah, so it's a New York Times bestseller, and it was on the top charts in the Amazon health books. So, you know, when we got into this, we were like, we're going to read what's out there so that A, we know what the public's reading, and B, we can, you know, learn from people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's how I found this one.
Well, to kick this off, in the middle of the book, he comes up with this recommendation from his mother. And I think a lot of times when we talk about a healthy lifestyle, we say, you know, it's like your mother used to tell you. and then I think, well, you know, a lot of people don't have mothers that knew some stuff. You know, and maybe they didn't come up in a healthy home or a healthy lifestyle. So I think it's kind of fun when we refer to the mother that knows everything and helps us grow up. That's the kind of mother we all want, right?
Yeah.
So your mother in Shakespeare knew, he says, the benefits of sleep for the brain. And he has this little amazing breakthrough. So I'm going to read it to you because I thought it was pretty good. Scientists have discovered a revolutionary new treatment that makes you live longer. It enhances your memory and makes you more creative. It makes you look more attractive. It helps you slim and lowers food cravings. It protects you from cancer and dementia. It wards off colds and the flu. It lowers your risk of heart attacks and stroke, not to mention diabetes. You'll even feel happier, less depressed, and less anxious. Are you interested?
Oh, yeah. How much does this cost me?
Right, and it's not a drug, folks. It's a proven benefit of a full night of sleep.
Oh, wow. It makes it sound like that magic pill we're all looking for.
Absolutely. So how was your sleep last night?
Oh, it was good. You know, for the first couple years of my children's life, I didn't have good sleep. So now I wake up every day like super excited that I got a full night's sleep.
Yeah,
a whole new outlook.
One of the things that he talks about in this book is how sleep is structured. And for you academics out there, you'll probably want to dive into some of that conversation. We might touch lightly today in our conversation about melatonin and the circadian rhythms and the stages of sleep, your REM sleep and your non-REM sleep, and look at waveforms. It's fascinating. I mean, if you have an interest and you don't know these things, this author conveys it in a very understandable way.
Yes. And I had a physician friend who said, I read this book twice because it was so fascinating.
Yeah.
So he goes in, you mentioned melatonin and the circadian rhythm. He talks a lot about that and the things that can interrupt it, like caffeine and alcohol. Like we think a nightcap is going to help us fall asleep, and it actually makes our sleep a lot worse.
Absolutely. So before we kind of get into that, maybe we could talk about what's happening to us right now during the day as our melatonin is building up. And so at dusk, it's going to kick in and build up and make us sleepy. Most of us don't listen to our bodies.
Well, and we're inside, and we are exposed to light, even, it could be 8 p.m. and it's dark outside, but we're watching a big screen TV and we've got our living room lights on, or we've got our phone right in front of our face. And what does that do to our melatonin?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't let us, we end up kicking out more adenosine. Adenosine is another molecule that they talk about, and it builds up during the day. And you mentioned caffeine. Your body's trying to tell you need to rest, and this adenosine is signaling that. But you drink your coffee, and it blocks a little receptor on your cell surface that doesn't let your body get the message from adenosine. It keeps you awake. So instead of letting your body achieve its rest, you're playing with it. And the same thing with lights. We're manipulating the natural cycle with our society right now. And that he gets to at the end of the book. I was thinking about when you said you were a mom and your sleep has been changed. He goes into sleep over our life course.
Cycles.
Yeah, and he talks about whether we're monophasic or biphasic in our sleep. And monophasic means one dose of sleep a day. And, so some of us have the luxury of, going to bed and sleeping until it's time to wake up and your body wakes you up.
Right.
Not an uninterrupted sleep. There are some civilizations where they're biphasic, where they get sleep at night, but they also do a nap in the middle of the day. And I thought that was kind of an interesting concept because the idea of power napping is popular right now.
It is. It's starting to get a lot of talk out there. Are you a napper? Do you like to nap?
I've never been a napper, but
I can't nap either.
I have experimented with power napping. And I've set a timer and done the 20-minute thing. And I'm telling you, you feel pretty good.
Well, it's funny. I follow another podcaster, and she's like, my nap is exactly 18 minutes long, and I've experimented. If it goes longer, I don't feel so
That's
great.
right.
So apparently you can play with it to get it just right for you.
Yeah, and there's a cycling that we do in our longer duration sleep that's on like a 90-minute twist. Mm-hmm. And so this idea, he talks about artificially awaking ourselves with an alarm clock and hitting a snooze button. How many of us do that?
Yeah,
I'm raising my hand.
Yeah. And the snooze button can make us feel a lot worse.
Because it interrupts that 90-minute cycle.
Yes,
so you get back into your sleep for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then you hit the snooze button again because you really don't feel like getting up.
Right.
It's just awful what we do to ourselves. And then we drag out and try to perform at optimum levels. And most of us, they say in the United States, are sleep deprived.
Another thing that he talks about is how just staying up 1 hour later than usual can also affect that cycle. And you never really get that part of the cycle back. Do you remember that part?
Yeah. There's so many fun ideas in here, weren't there?
Yes.
And you'd read them and go, oh yeah, I know that one.
Right.
I've experienced that.
And he talks about dreams and how they help us be creative.
Yeah, because during the wake time, our brain is getting all the stimulation and bringing in all these ideas, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're collecting information.
Right, and it makes connections that you wouldn't think to make while you're awake and thinking logically.
Yeah, and parts of that sleep, you're reflecting on what you saw during the day. And then the next part of your sleep, you're deciding to forget stuff, remember stuff, and make your emotional memory.
Yeah,
and that's why
so
the
neat.
structure of the sleep is really important, because if you don't get into all those phases, that stuff doesn't happen. And then you have kind of brain fog. Your brain doesn't function well. It's brain health.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he mentions that we don't realize when we're sleep deprived.
No, that's what you don't know how sleep deprived you are if you're sleep deprived, right? Well, let's go back to that thing about you being a mom right now with young children and the sleep patterns. Mm-hmm. I was fascinated with the fetus. He's talking about when we're a fetus. You're doing a lot of this REM because you're learning, even in the fetus. It's where you're acquiring information, and it's like, oh, okay. So what your mom's doing can be critical. And if she's drinking alcohol or a lot of caffeine or not getting her sleep, it really can affect development of the fetus and the sleep pattern the child establishes in that developmental phase, which is, I'm sure you could write a whole book on that and get into it. But then as you get to be an infant, you're then in that, your brain is still growing and it's processing, it's making its connections. And then when you're a child, you have those sleep naps. They do nap, right?
Yes.
And infants sleep a lot, don't they? I mean, that's one thing you notice when it's, God, this kid's asleep, and I got to get them to sleep again, and then they're sleeping again. And then the napping, and then as you get to be an adolescent, oh, that really messes you up, because how many teenagers want to sleep late, not go to school, and school starts too early for them?
Well, and he talks about that their circadian rhythm is different than adults.
Right.
Yet we put them on the bus so early in the morning.
And we get mad at them.
And we get mad at them
Yeah.
for wanting to sleep in.
And not fit our schedule.
Exactly.
You got to be on my schedule.
Right. So Matthew Walker really calls for us to consider changing the way society is set up in that way.
Yeah, from all of the environmental exposures and to the dietary habits to the structure of sleep. But he talks about the two chronotypes, those night owls and the morning larks.
Oh, yeah, you really enjoy that.
Yeah, and when we have the industrialized society where we're on punch clocks, people who really don't want to get up are getting up to earn an income, and then they can't go to sleep and get enough sleep and get enough quality sleep, that they put themselves at great risk.
Right.
And that's what he talks about, the cardiovascular issues and the cancer issues and emotional issues as well. Violence, the propensity towards agitation, and those kinds of things that don't make for good relationships. I heard a story this week about Amazon, and I'm not spreading rumors because I don't have anything to back it up, so maybe I am spreading rumors.
What is this rumor?
Well, they said they were starting a shift at 1:30 a.m. to something like noon to make sure that we all get our stuff. And according to what Matthew Walker says, we're setting these people up for, the World Health Organization says night shift is a potential carcinogen.
Right. We have so many night shifts. And my mind goes to the hospital.
I know.
Because you have to have night shift at the hospital, so there's really no way around that. Mm-hmm. My husband, through residency, I've watched.
Oh, he's a physician, right?
He's a physician, so I've watched it change through internship and residency and fellowship, that they're realizing they can't go that long on a shift in a safe manner for them or the patients.
Right.
So they have started to shorten that responsibility. So at least they're aware of that and they're making changes.
Yeah, and that's been a huge thing, because that was the indoctrination and the kind of hazing of the medical profession as to how tough are you, and if you really want to do this, you've got to pull these long 38-hour shifts or even longer.
Exactly.
And
but then we have people
good.
in the health field who aren't healthy because they can't take care of themselves because they're putting the job first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so helping ourselves find a way to balance our lives, it's tricky, isn't it?
It is.
And it's one of those things that sometimes it's so simple, it's hard. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lesson in a lot of these things. At the end of the book, he has a terrific appendix, 12 tips for healthy sleep. And so if we want to kind of review those quickly, I think that would be a take-home message, bottom line.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, he talks about sticking to a sleep schedule. Even on the weekend, keep the same schedule. Don't do that sleep-in thing. It disrupts the pattern. Exercise, we love exercise. We talk about that in some of our books.
Right.
And it's proven to give you a good benefit for sleep, but you don't want to do it 2 to 3 hours before bedtime.
Yeah, that's an interesting recommendation.
And then you talked about caffeine, but we didn't mention nicotine.
Avoid caffeine and nicotine, including from, soft drinks and coffee.
So let's talk nutrition, Kristen. Are you going to recommend sodas to anybody?
Oh, no. No. But I talked to plenty of people who are drinking them, and, they might be drinking Pepsi, and then they go to like sugar-free Monster drinks, and I'm like, oh, that's not really what I meant. But
Yeah, let's talk a little more about that. And then alcohol.
yes, avoid alcohol and drinks before bed. Like I said, that nightcap doesn't really help you fall asleep. I can't remember where he goes into explaining why that is, but you might fall asleep
because
early, but then it wakes you up.
It'll help initiate sleep, but then it fractures it. You can't maintain it because of the chemical stuff that's going on with the aldehydes and acetones or ketones that are coming out of the metabolism of the alcohol. Mm-hmm. Those compounds then disrupt the rest of the sleep pattern.
Right.
As I remember, and now some expert can take issue with that too. What about eating big meals before bedtime?
Yes, avoid large meals and beverages late at night. A light snack is okay. So many people find that like a little bit of carbohydrates helps them fall asleep. But eating a big meal, I often tell people not to eat right before sleeping for many reasons. A lot of it is reflux, but your body needs time to digest. And we know that when we go into sleep mode, lots of things shut down. And so we need to give our bodies that time to digest at least 2 to 3 hours before.
Yeah, and
bedtime.
We'll want to take that up probably as we read another book, because we've got one that talks about that intermittent fasting concept of not eating for long periods of our 24 hours. Well, and if you're on medicines, you want to make sure that you read the inserts and pay attention to when they say to take them, because there's a lot of science behind that. Napping.
Ooh, don't take naps after 3 p.m.
Right. And then this thing about going to bed. We want to get ready for bed. You want to unwind a little bit, turn those blue lights off, right? Dark room, cool room, gadget-free bedrooms. Take a hot bath before you go to bed. All that wonderful stuff that nobody has time for.
Or nobody wants to do.
And why is that?
I don't know. It's like we want to cram so much into our day because we like feeling productive. We like doing things.
Ooh.
Yes.
So we might need to work on that. I wonder if there's a book about that. We might have to look for one of those.
Yeah, we might. That would be a good next read. Dark bedroom, cool bedroom. He talks a lot about the temperature.
Yeah, don't you hang your feet and hands out every now and then?
I bundle up to go to sleep. But if I do get too hot, it wakes me up.
Yeah, he says splashing cold water on your face before you go to bed allows a lot of heat to come out of your skin. Mm-hmm. And so you want to get that core temperature down about 2 to 3 degrees is all you want to get it down to get a good initiation of sleep and maintenance.
Right, and we have such smart thermostats now. We can set those to, be a little cooler at night for us as well.
Right. And then don't lie awake in bed for too long. Just go to bed.
Oh, and he says we skipped 11, have the right sunlight exposure. So getting out in the daytime is really key to get yourself that sunshine.
Right. So he does give us some tips from his expertise. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited about this book. I'm glad we read it.
Would you recommend reading?
I definitely would recommend this one. It's a fascinating topic. As a matter of fact, I've read a couple other books on this subject, and we'll read some more because we are learning more and more with the work of people like Matthew Walker. He's a professor of neuroscience and psychology at UC Berkeley, and he's with the Center of Sleep Science, and he has some affiliation with Harvard. So there are hot spots around the country where there's some laboratories doing the sleep studies and looking at what happens and relating it to all of us. And I like it.
Yeah, I do too. I would recommend it. It's a long read, but really interesting. And I want to sum it or end it with saying, he has recommendations not to fight technology, but to embrace it. And he has some really great ideas about how we can use technology to sync up our circadian rhythms. We have all this smart technology now. I mentioned, having your thermostat drop down at night. Well, he's talking about having your lights change at night automatically. We have these trackers that we can keep track of our steps. Well, he's recommending now we're going to have it, keep track of, it sync up to our house so that it changes our lights for us. And he was even talking about, like, if there were two people in the same room, then the house is going to accommodate that and, you know, average out what those two people need in terms of their light. So it's a really crazy look
new
into the
agey,
future.
right?
But, and he also, the last thing he is like, we need to educate people on the importance of sleep. Like you said, your doctor doesn't ask you about sleep.
Well, a few of them are learning to do that, but it's not common.
Right. And he asked all of his friends and acquaintances, did you learn about nutrition in school? Did you learn about exercise in school? Did you learn about, you know, sex and drug education in school? And everybody's like, yeah. And he said, did you learn about sleep and the importance of sleep in school? Not one person did. So he's really calling for this information needs to be out there in schools so that kids can then grow up and teach their kids, and we can...
Which is that back to what Mother said concept
Yes.
that I had earlier, is some people don't have moms that know this stuff, and they don't structure a home environment that allows for these routines.
Right.
And that's not hard to establish, but if you don't know it, you're not going to do it. And there's so much pressure on us from the media and the electronics that have kind of intruded on all of this.
Yes.
So, well, we have some good ideas here, and I am with 360 Health. We recommend healthy lifestyles. We make healthy happen. We like to talk to individuals about their individual personalized needs, and we start with assessments and continue from there and look at products that are non-toxic, that's whatever they put on, in, or around their bodies are going to support their health.
And I am with Well Balanced Nutrition. I offer personalized nutrition coaching, and we do ask about sleep. That is one thing that I talk about with everybody because, as we know, sleep can interfere our ability to have a healthy metabolism. So we can be found at wellbalancednutrition.com. And we hope that you enjoy reading Why We Sleep. And if you want to tell us what you thought of this podcast or the book, go to our Facebook page, the Health Geeks Book Club Podcast on Facebook, and interact with us.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening in.
Views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.